Chris, if I may, to get this show started today.
Hey, don't get us like some sort of copyright violation here.
Hello, friends. This is not the official theme song. This is a cover of the official theme song. Welcome to the Southside Beat. It is a wonderful day in Western Pennsylvania. He's Chris Halicke. I'm Corey Crisan. The spring has sprung. The unofficial first day has arrived. This is a football show, so we'll get to football. But I had to do that. Hello, Chris.
I mean, that was something. It's been a while since you've been on here.
I could have really done it up, like wrote a scripted intro. I could have really laid into it saying, this is where boys become men, where men become champions, where green jackets, pimentos and cheese, fathers and sons gather for one weekend of the calendar year. It's my favorite event of the year, bar none.
Yeah, Masters is great.
Let's do football. Awesome. Let's do football. Hi, Chris.
What's up, man?
We're back on the Southside Beat. No technical issues today. Yesterday was quite the kerfuffle trying to figure out what was happening.
We couldn't. So if you saw on our YouTube channel, we had like 3 pending live streams. And so it was interesting. We weren't able to get it going. Thankfully, DK and Ramon were able to do it. And so, man, Mike is hating already. He said, Chris, get ready for his role of management. Keep everybody waiting. Hey, listen, the reason why I was late is because I was taking another load of stuff over to the storage unit. So yes, it was job related technically. So,
apparently my soft-spoken nature today is catching the chat off guard. I could never emulate Jim Nantz. I could never emulate Jim Nantz, but
I can emulate Tony Romo.
Darn it, if I will do my best to narrate in a similar inflection and similar tone to how he would do his typical introduction.
Sorry about that, Josh. Josh said I was getting blown up with notifications yesterday. Sorry about that, man.
Hey, glad to hear you're getting them.
Technical issues. Yeah, no, it's good that. So it was weird. Like we were trying to create the stream. Like we have a streaming service that goes through and it feeds to YouTube, and the streaming service would not create it. It said error, like try again in a few minutes. So I did, and even though it didn't create it in our streaming service, it still fed it to YouTube. So and so you're like, well, can't you just do it on YouTube? It's like, it would be a completely different show. We don't have no.
We don't have the bells and whistles associated with that really helps pull this all together. B-Phil just says, don't emulate Booker T. No, you don't have to have me do that. The 5-time. There you
go. Speaking of which, how did you WrestleMania? Give it a grade.
So the main event
really Sunday, quick. We have to talk about football on here.
So the main event Sunday night was off the chain. It was everything I wanted it to be. Obviously, hearing the Stone Cold glass shatter instead of the Undertaker bell would have been, I can't say better, but it also makes sense given the history the Undertaker's had with the family. Yokozuna, of course, dating back to. I enjoyed it. I had fun with the weekend. There were some good matches, some great matches, a couple stinkers in there, but you're going to get that when you have a 13 match card. You're going to get that. So they can't all be bangers. I loved the main event. Bayley won the title, which I wanted to happen. I love Bayley. I love watching her wrestle. I'm really, really, really want to go back and watch the Drew McIntyre Seth Rollins segment again, because for my money, this has been Drew McIntyre's best work of his career. SSWWF. Yeah, really.
We do need to get to some football.
Oh, we will. But
so grade.
I'll give it an A. I'll give it an A. Okay. I genuinely had fun watching it. It was everything I wanted it to be. I think I only missed 2 predictions the whole weekend, so
that's cool.
I'll take that. That.
All righty. So we did not get a chance to talk yesterday, but there was a big visitor on the South Side yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
Jackson Powers Johnson. I was about to say the name wrong. Jackson Powers Johnson, center from Oregon. First center that wasn't Zach Frazier visiting the South Side. Very, very significant. Obviously, like it doesn't necessarily mean like, oh my God, that's the guy the Steelers are taking. But yeah, it's still especially because like, okay, didn't meet with him at the combine. Okay, didn't attend the pro day. Or didn't have anybody like significant there at the pro day. And so it's like, what are we like? What's the deal there? Because it seems like the Steelers should be at least entertaining that. They should be at least kicking the tires on, okay, especially if there's like possible concerns over medicals and stuff like that, like bringing him in would be I would think the bare minimum in terms of doing your due diligence. And actually it happened now. So I think that actually if you had to choose any of them, if you had to choose just one medium to meet this guy, I think a pre-draft visit is the best way to do it, just because of all the situations.
They've been relatively quiet on the pro day circuit, and I think that's important to note. I believe the count's only 4 that they've gone to, meaning the Steelers front office in some capacity. It's few this year, or at least
they've had like scouts and coaches and stuff at many more. But yeah, when you're talking about like Mike Tomlin and Omar Khan, and it's not been quite as I mean, they're still out there. They're still doing it. But when you look at like the strong contingent, that obviously you have to look at Georgia. You have to look at Michigan. Those are the 2 big ones. But getting Jackson Powers Johnson in the doors on South Water Street is pretty significant because, okay, if there are concerns over medicals, well, now you can get your own hands on them. Right. Now you can be the one to administer the test that you want to do. And then you can feel really good either way, whether it's like, yeah, no, we can't draft this guy. Like there's no way. Or you can, quell a lot of questions about the guy, a lot of concerns about the guy and be like, no, you know what? If the situation comes up in the draft in which we are comfortable taking this guy, we're comfortable doing it.
Real quick, before I continue the conversation, I see the comments on the live show talking about OJ Simpson passing away.
Yeah.
Just it's been good so far, but let's keep things appropriate today, please.
Yeah.
With that being said, the Jackson Powers Johnson visit. Obviously, like you said, the big thing around that is getting his medicals situated, getting his medicals sorted out. There are so many things that will take place Combine Week and Senior Bowl Week. And of course, the medical evaluation is a big one during the Combine Week. But this is an opportunity not just for the medicals to get affirmed or to get confirmed in some cases, but most importantly, it's the Steelers getting their team doctors and their procedures with Jackson Powers Johnson and their final test results. I remember at the Combine, Zach Frazier took a long time to come out and do his interviews because he spent so much time at medical. He spent so much time getting looked at. And I think he took about an hour and a half, almost 2 hours to come back out to talk to reporters, which is the step after medicals, the day before they work out. With Jackson Powers Johnson, there was nothing like that. And obviously, teams have been doing diligence on him. This is the prime candidate to bring in for something like this. This is why these top 30 visits are so significant and why it's so important to note who is being brought in for these. Now, the question comes up. Let's see. Where is it? Barber says it. Is his stock dropping? Now, there's 2 schools of thought on this. Number one, it's that he is the lead dog among the race between him and Zach Frazier to be the first center selected. But now, or at least he was, but now the conversation is not only is he, but also the conversation is Jackson Powers Johnson sliding back because of these rumored medicals? Because the more top 30 visits he takes, the more rumblings that come out, the more conversations that are had. And usually when it comes to health, the more that's being said or written about you, the less favorable it actually is. The old no news is good news approach here, right? If people are not really talking about your medical history, that means you have a pretty good medical history. But if the rumors are coming out and where there's smoke, there's fire about Jackson Powers Johnson and his medicals, and of course a concussion history, of course with injury history, then that's probably not good for his draft stock.
Yeah, I mean, I think even regardless of the medicals, I don't know if it's as much about Jackson Powers Johnson sliding back as it is about Graham Barton making his stock just absolutely go through the roof.
As it's mentioned here.
Barton is. I actually think at this point, I actually think Graham Barton might be the first one off the board in terms of who will end up playing center in the NFL. Because I know Graham Barton wasn't a center in college, but he's going to transition to the interior and most likely at center. So I think, here, hold on a second. There's a question here. Mike in Texas asks, Chris and Corey in reference to Barton. I know he could play all three inside spots. Is there any truth that he could play all five? I mean, yeah. I mean, he played tackle in college, so yeah, he could in theory. But you're not spending a first round pick on a guy who can play multiple positions. Those are the types of guys that you take on late day 2 or early or any time on day 3. Those are the you're not looking for guys who can fill multiple. You're looking for, especially in the first round, you're looking for a guy who can solidify an important position. You're looking for a guy who can solidify right tackle so that Broderick Jones, your first round pick from last year, can go play left tackle. Or you're looking for a guy who can anchor the offensive line in the middle at center. Or you're looking for a guy who can stand right next to George Pickens on the outside and be like, this is the dynamic duo that we have on the outside. Or that's more or less what you're looking for in the first round. And James asked, what changed on Barton? I think just the more testing and the more just like the numbers and everything like that that's been going on, like the athleticism is starting to become quantifiable, and athleticism at center nowadays is really, really imperative. There's just no denying that. And when you mix that along with Jackson Powers Johnson, even though he had a strong Senior Bowl week, he had, the hamstring issue and then these other medical concerns, which I think revolve around concussions.
Yeah.
It's a combination of both of why Powers Johnson could still be the first center off the board. Like a lot of these concerns could have just been rumblings and then that's it. There's actually nothing there. But whenever you hear that kind of stuff, you got to kind of wonder, okay, what's going on here?
Yeah. When you look at the list of who has made their pre-draft visits to the South Side, handful of tackles, Jackson Powers Johnson, Zach Frazier, handful of defensive linemen, a lot of cornerbacks. I think 4 or 5, maybe 6 of them have made the visit officially. Like, again, they're scouting a certain position for a reason in this process. They're prioritizing this offensive line for a reason. And now, when I think of the shift of Jackson Powers Johnson because of his medicals, it makes me wonder, and as Stephen A. says here, do you think Cooper DeJean propelled himself into the top 20 after his pro day? I'll argue the same question could be asked for Barton. Did Barton put himself ahead of Powers Johnson or Frazier because of that versatility, because he has the ability to play guard or center and maybe tackle? Now, Jim asked, could they grab Barton and put him at center and then move the guard when Daniel's contract is up? They could. But one would think that they would want to find somebody that's ready to play center and ready to play center now and ready to play center next year and is going to be at that position and remain.
But
There's a bunch of things they could do here, though.
But if they draft Barton and James Daniels continues to play well and remains affordable, why get rid of him?
Mm-hmm.
Like I don't understand that.
Mm-hmm.
Like I would think if you can get, I mean, shoot, like look at the offensive line that played really well like last decade for the Steelers. Like a lot of the time it was the same 5 guys. Like obviously it wasn't the same 5 guys for like forever, but it was, Marquise Pouncey was a mainstay. Ramon Foster was a mainstay. You had like David DeCastro. Now I understand that these were all guys that weren't signed as free agents. Pouncey and DeCastro and Ramon were all gone, acquired through the draft or undrafted process. But however you acquire him, if he remains affordable and he plays well, like I like this guard tandem that the Steelers have. And if you put better tackles and a better center around those two guards should end up playing better.
Yeah.
And so that's why I think I don't think moving on from James Daniels should just be something that I don't think we need to be looking at, okay, we need to get rid of somebody. I think the only time you really look to get rid of somebody is when they become unaffordable, when they actually play out of what you can afford to pay them based off of, how you're going to allocate funds in the salary cap.
I like this thought here from Joshua, who says you have to go with whoever you feel is a sure thing. Number one, don't play games. Nothing's guaranteed. Unfortunately, I've watched a lot of round ones recently, and it's 50-50. That's another component of this. 50-50, yeah. A lot of tackles 50-50. Good call. That is so valid in this because, and especially with this draft, how imperative it is to get this pick right, whether that is tackle, center, cornerback, D-line, whatever it might be. It's so or wide receiver, I guess now. It's so imperative they get this first-round pick correct. They haven't drafted well, with the exception, most likely, of last year, over the last handful of years, right? You could say roughly 4 out of 5, they have not been good classes. Now, when you have a quarterback shift like they've had with that whole room, there has to be something there with this draft class to help build on what we expect to be a strong draft class from last year. And as B. Phil says here, and Chris, you've mentioned this ad nauseum, best player available with an eye on positions of need.
Yeah.
That has to be prioritized in this draft. This team has to get younger in significant positions, but also they have a talent deficiency at some positions as well, like a tackle, where I would rather have Fuaga or Mims or Latham start than I would Dan Moore at this stage. And I would rather have
100%.
On the same playing field here, I would rather have either Powers Johnson or Frazier or even Barton at this stage starting at center than I would Herbig. That's how I stand right now with 2 weeks to go until the draft.
Barbara asked, has Con left too many holes that need to be filled? I mean, as of right now, yes, but there's still 2 weeks until the first day of the draft. It's 2 weeks from today. There's still time to add more, whether that be at receiver, whether that be at center, whether that no matter what the position is, they can still add more to this roster. They did that last year. Last year they acquired Allen Robinson very, very late, in terms of like up against the draft. And so that kind of negated receiver as a potential option. I think receiver was still being played around with in terms of like whenever everybody was guessing on what the Steelers were going to be picking. But they ended up not taking a receiver because, once they acquired Allen Robinson, it's like, okay, we got a top 3 of, Deontay, George Pickens and Robinson. And then, then you have Calvin Austin and, the receiver room was a lot deeper than it is now. But if they go out and they acquire a receiver, whether it be via trade or whether it be, and listen, I've seen a couple of comments, just really quick sidebar. Do not buy into the Brandon Ayuk stuff. I understand, like, as soon as there's a report out there that the Steelers are still open to trading for a receiver, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be the top guy that everybody's talking about. Number one, John Lynch shot that stuff down at the owners' meetings, and then I also heard from almost the horse's mouth, pretty much, that it's absolute crap. Like, unless that is somehow some sort of gigantic smokescreen to throw off a scent, it's not happening. So let's just get it out of our minds. But the other thing to consider here is, no matter what we think the Steelers need to do, we need to look at the facts of what's going on here. And anybody who read my Chalk Talk this week on the tackles, I had some insider reporting on there too, which is one of the great things that I'm going to be able to do and take Chalk Talk to another level, is to be able to get some background information on what's going on. And I know for a fact, and I even put it in there, that tackle is a big priority because of what the Steelers are doing. And the one thing that I teased about for a long time, and I put it in Chalk Talk, was, listen, they were telling position coaches, scout right tackles. Like, when you go to these pro days, scout right tackles. Now, this includes like offensive line coach Pat Meyer. If the offensive line coach is going to pro days and they're telling him scout right tackles, when he is there to look at all offensive linemen and they're saying put a priority on right tackle, what do you think the priority is? And that is that's why you begin to look at, okay, well, what are the options? How could they possibly make that work? That doesn't mean that they're going to play within and handcuff themselves to a tackle position, but they want to make sure that whenever they go into the first round, that we like these guys. We like this guy, this guy, and this guy. And throughout the process, we don't like this guy, or this guy.
It's why Isaac Williams was sent all over the country to look and to coach up tackles. It's what we've been saying since the end of January, beginning of February.
Yeah.
This is not a deep fake by any means. This is real stuff. It's why they're doing this. And now, when you look at that depth at right tackle, specifically at right tackle, because Omar Khan has said Broderick Jones will be a left tackle. When you look at that depth at right tackle, it's really good come 20. Whether that is Guyton or Latham or Mims or one of those guys, Fruwaga if he falls, the Washington kid whose name I keep botching, Fountaino. I keep botching that name. I don't know if that's right, but I'm gonna roll with it. But what I'm saying is there's such a deep pool at tackle this year, and as it's kind of brought up here in a way, let me find the comment. I had it starred and I lost it. But point is that the best player available at 20 is going to be there because of the absolute run of quarterbacks that's projected to go. Because Williams, Daniels, McCarthy, May, those four alone are projected to go before 20. Then you look at the possibility of Nix, and you look at the possibility of some of these guys behind him, and you look at, well, how many quarterbacks could be taken before 20? How many tackles could be taken before 20? I think it's pretty apparent that at least Alt and Fashanu are going to be taken within the first 10. And then you look at that depth of tackle. Remember, we ran that mock draft last week. I ran it on my phone right in real time. And it was look at this run of tackles that could take place during that stretch where 20 is or right before it. And again, if there's somebody that the Steelers really like at that position and they're very adamant about getting that position taken care of at 20, maybe they move up to get their guy, just like they did last year with Broderick Jones. You can't rule anything out when it comes to that position, and especially one of need, and especially because it's being so highly prioritized by this organization.
Yeah. Bob says, I don't think there's a starting center at 51. There's actually, believe it or not, there's actually and this is not just a PFF mock draft simulator theory here. There's some rumblings that a guy such as Zach Frazier could fall to the middle to the later stages of the second round. I think Mel Kiper had him going like 57th in his latest 2-round mock. And so that's granted it's a mock draft, but it's a, and I understand, like, people might be like, oh, it's Mel Kiper, he's wrong. It is what it is. But, again, the one thing that I would like to stress about mock drafts is it gauges two things. It gauges what, and see, the Barber's right there, laughing, saying Mel Kiper, but see, here's the thing is that, the one thing, and this is not just a Mel Kiper thing. It doesn't matter if it's McShay or if it's PFF, or it doesn't matter, where the mock draft is coming from to a certain extent. But for the guys who do this stuff for a living, they talk to team executives, they talk to team scouts, they get a feel for what's going on with pro days, which players are trending up, which players are trending down. This stuff has got it helps give a feel for I guess the best way to put it is to give a barometer for what's going on when it comes to because for the most part, yes, there's always going to be surprises. There's always going to be players that were expected to go top. Joey Porter Jr. was one last year. Surefire first round pick completely falls out of the first round. Like nobody, I don't think anybody really saw that happening. There were some people talking about the fact that he might have been the top cornerback in the draft and the Steelers would have had no chance to get him. But he completely doesn't get drafted in the first round. It happens. So, that's the one thing that mock drafts are not like the bane of the existence when it comes to draft prep. But I think so many people get caught up in, oh, he was wrong with the second pick. Like, so I can't trust this guy anymore. It's like, it doesn't matter. Like it's supposed to, that's not what the point of a mock draft is. You're not supposed to be trying to, as soon as the dude's wrong about one thing, you just completely cast it aside and not take it seriously.
This is a way to word it, and I like it from Bob. The first round fell out of Jackson Powers Johnson. I think that could be true, but also I also think it's valid to say that he fell out of the first round as well. Like, I think there are so many risers within this draft class, and so many that from the time of the Senior Bowl until now have leapfrogged Jackson Powers Johnson. And also, I think with the way the free agency played out too, I can't sit here and say that some of these center needy teams, or at least all of them obviously didn't satiate their appetite for one, or else, Jackson Powers Johnson could fall to the Steelers in the third round. We could be talking about that, but that's not going to happen. Like, there is the quotient of who's around Jackson Powers Johnson and Zach Frazier, for that matter, at center. And how many teams are going to look at those guys and say first round, second round, third round talent? Some teams might grade both of them outside of the second round. That's why these teams do this kind of thing. So given the medicals, given for both for that matter, given the rise of some players that were in that same vicinity as those guys, as far as rankings go and as far as what teams did in free agency, yeah, maybe there aren't enough picks in that first round to be made for a Powers Johnson or even a Frazier. Not that Frazier was going to be first anyway, but Barton's a typical example of this. When you think of Barton from Duke and what he did in this pre-draft process, there's an argument to be made that he leapfrogged both of them as the top interior lineman in this draft. And now that's why the conversation is shifting at, okay, who is the best interior lineman in this draft? And it's not out of the realm of possibility to say that it's going to be Barton.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Like, there's just like comments are continuing to hate on mock drafts, and it's funny because we're actually getting here at the end of the show, and I'm gonna go ahead and tease Corey and I were just talking about this. So tomorrow, if we can figure out a way to do this, we're actually gonna do that. We teased doing a mock draft on here. And I think the way we talked about doing it before was like something along the lines of we would like take turns, like going through and like mocking out the complete first round. But the more I thought about that, the more I was kind of like, well, it really doesn't matter like what we think for the other 31 teams. So let's do it this way. If we can figure out a way to like either screen share or to do something so that we can put it up on here, we're going to go through and use the PFF mock draft simulator. And Corey and I are going to do a 3-round mock for the Steelers, and we're going to put our heads together. Doesn't matter who's who. One of us will be Omar Khan. The other one will be Andy Weidel. It doesn't matter. We'll be the representation for what we think the Steelers should do or might do. We might try to blend that, maybe not with our own personal opinions, but what we, what the intel that we do have, what we might think the Steelers try to do. And Joshua Dobbs asks, trades on? Yes, trades will be on. So the way I was thinking was, because I've already kind of played around with this a little bit, is like I'll do the mock draft simulator and I'll turn it on slow so that you can go through and you can see what each team is picking. And then when it gets to a certain pick, I'll like pause and like look at it and be like, okay, is there a trade worth having here? Like, is there a trade up situation worth having here? Like, if a certain player that I think the Steelers might be trying to eye, like, do we pause it, try to make a trade that we're comfortable doing? If not, then we let it keep going, and so on and so forth. So we can do that in terms of trading up. We can do that in terms of trading down. We could try that. So we might try to do something like that. If it's not tomorrow, it'll be soon. We'll figure it out, but we may do this tomorrow. It'll be fun.
There is a share screen function, so we'll see.
Might have to try to play around with that a little bit and see if it's possible.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll table that for tomorrow. We'll figure it out one way or another. But in one way or another before the draft commences 2 weeks from today, we'll have some kind of live mock or some kind of mock replay or whatever it needs to be. Joshua says, no hurry, it's BS anyway. Yeah, in some cases it is, but it's content, it's fun. Why not? All right, good 30 minutes today. We appreciate you all being here after yesterday's technical snafu. I'm happy to be back after doing a little Pirates baseball this week, and then yesterday, obviously, with the technical issues. We'll be back tomorrow, 3 p.m., right here on DK Pittsburgh Sports. If you missed it, DK and Ramon are going live only Wednesdays throughout this offseason now. So no DK and Ramon live until this coming Wednesday. And yeah, CJ, the draft is 2 weeks away. We're here.
Yep.
We're getting there.
Yep.
So,
which means Mike Tomlin and Omar Khan will most likely be speaking a week from Monday.
Yep.
Most likely. That's
Monday
usually,
of draft week.
yeah, that's usually the time that they speak is. So I would look at if the Steelers are going to make a move prior to the draft. I mean, it really could come at any time. It could come 10 minutes after we get off the air. But it really could come in. But I would say next week maybe a good time for the Steelers to make a trade or two, or make a trade, or make a signing, make a move or two.
I've got spring football Saturday, baby.
All right.
Pitt spring games this week. I'm excited. I'm ready to get going. All right. He's Chris Halicke. I'm Corey Crisan. Thank you all for joining us today. We'll talk to you on Friday. Cheers, everybody, and have a good one.